Good afternoon and welcome along to the second Talking Tech webinar for 2022. My name is Michael Oliver and I am the Head of Marketing at Client Server. And every time we do a Talking Tech, we always try to explore some of the big issues that are happening within the tech space, not only from a job perspective, but from the wider perspective as well. And we've got a really interesting topic today, because the world of hiring has, no surprise, after restrictions in the UK, sort of the middle of last year, were relaxed. Companies started hiring again, the job market picked up, but it's being described as something of a feeding frenzy. And not only are we seeing a massive number of people applying for jobs, but we're also seeing companies dig deep into their pockets to offer salaries perhaps 20 to 50 to X number of percent higher than what they normally would. But the question is, how long will it last? Is this going to be sustainable? And if not, what's going to happen? What will happen to the tech market? Will it bottom out? And what will you do if you're a job hunter and you don't get the opportunities as they're coming through thick and fast now? Well, we have two guys here who know the tech jobs market inside and out. Client Server Chief Executive Nick Boulton, and from Total Jobs, Director of Commercial, Dom Harvey. Good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon, Mike. Good night, Dom.
So, Nick, I'll throw to you first. This is perhaps the craziest market we've seen in terms of jobs, in terms of hiring. What's your sort of sense of where things are? What's your impression of how things have started off in 2022, and what's the lay of the land?
You actually mentioned feeding frenzy. I think that's a very apt description of what the market's like at the moment. It's absolutely crazy. I think not a huge amount has changed since the end of last year started this. It's, a huge amount of vacancies, massive shortage of talent, salaries that are, at the moment, just growing exponentially. And personally, I think not particularly sustainable at that growth rate, but, it's simple supply and demand. There's not enough talent. There's a shortage of the best people, and projects aren't going away. And I think the increased digitization of our life, like everything is now on the internet, everything is tech focused, everything is data focused. That's only getting bigger. That for me at the moment, I don't see that appetite of businesses diminishing for top talent. So I think that will continue for a while, but I also then envisage possibly there's going to have to be a slowdown of those salaries. They can't keep going that level. But who knows where that is and where that stops. There's so many factors still at the moment that are in play, and I think it won't be until we get over that hump of a lot of hiring projects that where the back of it's broken, they've got those people they want. Will we know how that looks probably later in the year? But it's tough at the moment. It really is hard.
Dom, is that what you're seeing on your side as well? Has the more companies are hiring, the interest from techies looking for jobs has skyrocketed? What are you seeing from a job board perspective?
Yeah, I think absolutely agree with a lot of what Nick said there. There is a huge demand on the market, and that's for many, many reasons, which, as Nick also said and pointed to, not just COVID, not just suppressed demand from COVID coming back all of a sudden, but let's remember that's kind of cast a bit of a fog over the fact that Brexit has been happening, and a lot of people had to return maybe to European sites and are now unable to come back to the UK or simply don't want to. There's also the fact, and this is more generally in the work market, but I think potentially true in the IT contract market, that you have an aging workforce that's done very well, very nicely, thank you very much. And they've decided that actually maybe that's me, or maybe I'm just going to do some contract work, but it's going to be at absolutely the highest rates, and they'll have to really lure me to do it. Lots and lots of things driving the salary increases, and the only area that I find difficult to kind of really pinpoint is when it will end, because it's a bit like the housing market in the early 2000s. You just thought this is absolutely insane. How can you spend over X amount, and then sat back and watched it go up and up and up, or like myself, moved out of London and watched it go up and up and up, to your regret. But so I'm not sure what necessarily is going to slow it down, because I think the government has woken up, and the country's woken up to the requirement to increase the pipeline of tech and digitally savvy candidates and talent within the UK, because there's going to be less of it coming from Europe. But that pipeline is going to take quite a long time to come through. And the current pipeline of people looking in the Generation Z, the newest digitally native audience, are incredibly switched on in terms of what they're worth, what they want out of the company, the whole CSR, corporate social responsibility, the whole DE&I, that it's not just the salary demands, it's what they want to see in the office, what they want their company to be about. I honestly think sometimes who'd be a CEO in the last 3 years, because it's a pretty difficult task. Not necessarily thankless, but certainly more difficult than it was 10 years ago.
It's certainly a case where it's no longer, who has the deepest pockets wins, is it? When a candidate is tossing up potentially 3 to 4 job offers, I think it was a blog we published on a client server website from our sales director Nick Haley, where he said this is the reality. Like, we have candidates entertaining possibly between 7 to 10 interviews and then getting 3 to 4 offers. But it's never going to be a case, is it, Nick, that the deepest pockets are going to win? Candidates are a little bit more savvy and dare I say even a little bit more demanding of the kind of roles that are out there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a balance at the moment. I think we've been going through a shift on salary side, exploding to new levels. But then I think now everyone realizes that's what they're going to have to pay to get the best talent. So you're right. I think now candidates are understanding, well, I can start looking at, will this business continue to offer flexible working? Will this business offer 4 days a week potentially? How much training do they give? How much interaction with I suppose one of the shocking things that this has started to pull people that are on, if not their first, potentially their second job cycle of looking for a new role, that have never met any of their own colleagues face to face, which 2 years ago that would have been unheard of. And I think more businesses are going to have to do a lot more. You touched on it, Dom, around social responsibility and how they, there's going to be so much more focus on how you do or how you build retention into a business and culture into a business, because as you mentioned, we've changed drastically as a business. We've gone from a 99.9% of the time face to face, see client candidate in office, to very, very little. I haven't done a client meeting since, I don't know, probably since the beginning of the pandemic, which is like that's not how traditionally recruitment was done or building relationships was done. And I think some people have found it easy, some people have found it hard. And businesses, we haven't done a huge amount of it, need to start thinking about, well, how do you train people to deliver progression, career training opportunity, but all virtually, all over Teams or Zoom or whichever medium they use, but how they make someone feel part of their business, and how do they not just attract those people, retain them. And I just think it's added a dynamic, not necessarily, I think because we all got used to it, not necessarily a bad dynamic. I just think one that I don't think anyone's quite solved out how it's going to work best, or which is the right combination of in office, out of office, with team, because it is, I still believe that there's a massive knowledge and experience void by not being in the office. You don't get those, and whether it's, I know technology teams are incredibly efficient, fully remote, because they're undisturbed, they know what they do, they've got code releases and know when they're doing things. But I can't help but feel their learning curve, especially of the younger technologists, that they have to be slightly hindered by the fact they're not sitting next to really experienced, very good engineers that give them immediate feedback on issues that they're doing. And I know that they'll still get that feedback, but it's not in real time. And I feel that kind of will be when the salary peak starts to dip, as people's learning slow and people realize, like, okay, well, I've got the most value I can from a business, and businesses start to look at, well, am I getting the most value for the person I've just hired? And over this period of time, am I getting what I think I should have paid for? And I think that will be when it starts to flatten out. But as you rightly said, I've no idea when that is.
reality
Dom,
check.
Dom, you not only see things from the agency side, but also directly with these tech companies themselves. Is that the read you're getting as well from both sides of the channel?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I mean, as you said, I work for Total Jobs Group, but I'm the sales director for CW Jobs, which is just focuses on tech. And obviously, we speak to retcons and we speak to the direct employer as well. But it's the same on both sides. It's either retcons frustrated that their direct employers maybe are a little bit behind the curve or don't really understand why they have to pay this much, and there's a real struggle. You spend half of your time talking about why their salaries aren't enough, and actually, as a savvy retcon, you've got to work out and divide your time in what's going to be feasible for you to place. So I can absolutely understand that. And as for directs, I saw a great presentation at the in-house recruitment event in November, and there was a speaker talking about, broadly speaking, companies falling into two houses. There's going to be the consumer of skills that has to pay through the nose because they're giving very, very little back. And there's going to be the builders of talent. And obviously that's going to be merged in between with various elements of that. But at one end of the spectrum, as the builders of talent, I think you can quite rightly ask to pay a little bit less because you're investing more in your people and your training is higher. But at the other end of the spectrum, you've got to realise you are going to be paying top dollar, and that's the basis that people are working for you, not because you have a great culture. And going back to your point, Nick, the point about being in the office, which I absolutely agree with. I'm not an advocate of all working from home or all working in the office, but again, a melded way of doing it. But I think in the absence of us not being in the office, the kind of purpose of the company that we are joining has a heightened dimension, because when we get up in the morning, it's not because we're sat next to a guy or a team member that makes us laugh or always keeps things light and keeps it buzzy, or a team that's like that. It's because you're sat in your own four walls. Yeah. It's the purpose you have for your work that day. And for a lot of people, that has become very important and increasingly important.
What I find interesting, you're so right with that, Tom, is that I think that more businesses are going to have to think about that and think about, so how do I know I'm sort of kind of going from one extreme to the other, but you'd get those CEOs that would stand up, give a vision for the business, everyone would jump on board and go ahead with it. But I think that what would miss there would be that, like, how are we doing along that route? And I feel that if you're going to keep and retain the best talent now, you're absolutely right. You're going to not only have to get them to buy into the vision, is like give them more regular bite-sized updates of like, how are we doing, where are we going, where's your kind of role in this fits. And I think that, I mean, as I said, I completely agree with you. I'm neither fully in the office or fully at home. I actually think one of the long-term benefits will be that we have a stronger, better workforce, because there's a bit more thought around work-life balance, healthy living. This has shed a light on mental health issues. Like, there's loads of benefits for it. I just think, you're absolutely right. Like, businesses just need to start adapting to, I know there's a shortage of talent now, but how are they going to then retain that talent and keep that talent growing and prospering in their business over the years? And I know we're going back to the salary thing a bit, but I mean, energy prices going up, inflation going up. It's also quite a hard one to also ratify as a business owner or a tech business going, okay, we're going to stop paying these levels of salary. Well, the immediate impact will be you don't get the best people. End of story. But it is I think the businesses that adapt or become a little bit more adaptable to building in a bit more stability around how you look after your workforce and how you get them to grow and be part of a business will be the ones that at least stem the flow of people leaving. So it's kind of it's not like a sieve case. We'll put loads in, suck them all out, and you're going to have to keep putting them in. You're at least building an infrastructure of people who believe in that vision and where you might be going as a business. But it's going to be, I think that's one of the big things this year will change how businesses and how business owners deliver those messages to the wider teams and wider employees in companies.
Yeah, and I think on the tech side specifically, there isn't going to have to be a realism that, a third to half of the people that you employ will be moving on, probably with better skills.
Yeah.
But the UK, the UK tech industry needs to understand they're all part of this, and if everybody's doing their bit, we're raising the bar and the skill levels of who we have in this country. And I think that tech has really had a spotlight thrown on it. IT tech, or however you want to call it, has really had a spotlight on it, particularly from the working from home and how fluidly that went. I was amazed that there were no utter disaster stories of businesses, maybe personal issues and things like that, cameras being on at the wrong time, but essentially nothing. No company absolutely fell to pieces. No high level company fell to pieces, and I think that's really raised tech's standing within people's mentality, and even of the people that were currently in it. It was the first time that people were realizing how damn important they were, and they had a real sense of pride about it. But again, perversely, that's probably driving, with their chests puffed out a little bit. They're thinking, well, maybe I could be going to get more money elsewhere. So if anything, it's driven a problem further, but hopefully it's attracted more people into that pipeline for a few years down the line.
I think it's actually on. Sorry, Dom.
Yeah. No. I've heard other stories of people coming in, maybe from the hospitality industry, on apprenticeships. I think Cisco had a fantastic example of somebody who'd done exactly that. A bar manager that had decided to retrain, and in the space of 9 months, because they grasped that nettle early in the pandemic, they were ready to go in at a junior level, and they are now part of the tech workforce within Cisco, but ultimately for the UK's benefit when they start to move around. But yeah, sorry, no, you were about to make a point.
I was literally not that example. I was literally going to say that the upskilling and cross skilling of people who, as you said, grasped it early on that they had this opportunity. I think that's going to be a massive benefit. And I mean, as a direct experience, my 15-year-old son decided to take computer science as a GCSE because of there's no way he would have done that, or had that thought process a couple of years ago. And I think, that is a big untapped pool at the moment of people that are getting upskilled. And as you said, hopefully the wider British economy and British tech market will benefit over the next 6, 12, 18 months. But I think that is exactly what I was going to say. I think the reskilling is going to be a big thing.
And I think one of the key, one of the really exciting parts about it was the long felt dearth of women in IT, women in the IT department, highlighted that, hang on a minute, we can work from home. And if I was in the IT department, I could, by the look of it, I could do this a lot more easier now because if I'm coding, then 2-3 days at home. So the two could potentially combine to solve what has been a long-standing problem and open up a huge pool of intellectual talent, etc. Because with the long-held 18% of tech workforce is being from on the female side, if we rebalance that and get close to 40, ultimately, obviously 50%, but these are massive numbers in the space of 2 or 3 years that could come through.
I want to ask just very quickly on the number of people who are, a number of people within the industry, working within the industry. Certainly when the new visa regulations kind of came in, a lot of people were thinking, okay, and certainly with the advent of more remote roles, that companies, particularly tech companies in the UK, would be more inclined to not only bring in that talent from outside because of the lack of borders, because of the use of remote work, but also perhaps embrace the more the new point system and the visa surrounding that. But is it a sense, I'm going to ask both of you this, is there a sense that companies are now kind of waking up and being more open to sponsoring candidates from not only outside Europe, but certainly from a little further afield? Or is it more they are veering towards, well, we can work remotely. That means we can hire people to live where they are, pay them a London salary, and draw them in that way. What's the balance there?
Well, I think that Nick would probably be better placed to speak about this than myself, because if people are outsourced as a deliverer of UK talent, if they're outsourcing stuff to maybe their Romanian arm of their company, we probably would never get to hear about that. That's the kind of real close contact that a recruitment consultant might have with their client. But I think that in terms of doing that, and that there's a whole problem and a whole challenge in terms of managing a team remotely, which if you've only just started to do that, it takes some time to ramp up and really avoid the pitfalls of that, because it's language issues, cultural issues, and things like that. So it's not such an easy fix of, well, we'll just let Poland do all of that stuff instead, because we've got nobody that can do it here. Equally, they're probably facing a lack of IT specialisms as well.
I think, yeah, I mean, you touched on it, Dom, that there's a lot of issues, well, not issues, a lot of hurdles you have to overcome. Quite rightly, a lot of people, you mentioned Brexit, who potentially went home or through the pandemic went home, have not returned. So there's a decline in terms of potentially some of the top talent that people might have needed to sponsor. I think also a lot of businesses, Mike, as you mentioned, have said, does it matter if we're hiring remotely? Does it matter that our work, our in Edinburgh, or does it matter that they're in Romania or Bulgaria? Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't make any difference. And I think I don't think necessarily businesses have suddenly changed their view of, we're much more open to sponsoring people, we're much more open to moving people over. I don't think they've needed to yet. I think that they have the ability to still tap into remote workers, whether that be still within the UK borders or outside. Obviously, it comes with slightly different tax issues or employment issues, but I don't think that's quite hit the mark in terms of people having to get into visas. I actually think that businesses have started to grow remote teams in nearshored locations, so in Europe and stuff, because of this, where there's incredibly good talent. They're still paying pretty much London rates, but I suppose the quality of work that's coming back is excellent, so they haven't had to consider moving people over. And I don't think, I think what will change with that is, as I think Boris announced it yesterday, his idea that potentially we're going to be removing all restrictions by the end of the month is, I think only once people are more in the office, more on site premises, will we then see whether what's the view of them as a long-term business. Do they want talent back in this country? Do they need people back in the office more? What's the view of it? But at the moment, I don't think really, businesses have changed their view on visas from my side.
It's interesting you mentioned the return to the office, because certainly we're based in London, kind of like in the thick of the city of London, just down from Bank, and I've noticed just in the last couple of weeks the volume of people around has gone up exponentially. So there's a sense, I feel, that the hybrid dream is now becoming a little bit more fixed, and that people are now spending 2-3 days a week in the office consistently, as well as working from home. And it seems like there is starting to form a little bit more solidity around what the nature of work in the UK is going to be like. And I feel like, is there a sense that tech teams and certainly tech companies are now they've laid the foundation, they've set up their remote systems, they're working remote, not only remotely, but using virtual desktops and invested in that part, that now they're more prone, they're more likely to kind of, I guess, more business as usual, no more kind of like ums and ahs. There's a little bit more consistency in the market.
Yeah, I think so. I think also actually, I think what it's allowed is there doesn't need to be a fixed strategy. Like you mentioned, obviously, virtual desktops, virtual remote sessions is, we as a business have done that. We've moved everything to the cloud. Everything is getting easier to get into, easier to secure, risk-free access to all of our data, or as risk-free as you can, is so what as long as I suppose those people can perform the function of their job, why does it matter necessarily where they are? I think you're absolutely right. I think as human beings, we're social creatures. So I think people have missed that interaction with colleagues and friends. And you're absolutely right, Mike. It's, you know, the city suddenly, it's gone from deserted to like nothing's changed kind of thing. Everyone's back in. I think there's, you know, don't forget, only whatever, 18 months, 2 years ago, there was very much a stigma around work from home meant you're probably not doing a huge amount of work. And I think everyone's got over that. And I think also perhaps now we've had an entire nation that's kind of got used to working at home and realized actually you can do loads of good work at home. And, you know, I might not have the strict 8 to 5 session, but I've cut out 2 hours a day for commute. I've cut out, you know, where I might have met a client for lunch and it's gone on a bit longer. I've cut out, you know, I don't know, some idle chat with colleagues or whatever. They're very productive at home. And I think as people now get back in the office and enjoy some social interaction, they'll also really appreciate, look, I've got I've got a report to write. I don't know, loads of admin to do. I can do that at home really efficiently. In fact, probably more efficiently than in the office. Yet I get to take my kids to school. I get to pick them up. I get to have a great work-life balance, and I then enjoy the time I also go into the office. So I think it's not. I don't think it's ever. You know, I do not. I think a business making a decision going, right, you're all in the office, that's it, would be very wrong, in my opinion. I think a business going, right, you're never coming into the office, we'll close the office, I think that would be wrong as well. I think you need to, you know, there's going to be a balance of what suits different companies. But I think people like the ability to have a bit of flexibility and have now grown used to, you know, working at home. It doesn't mean you're working 9 to 5. It just means you're working differently. You still have the same job to perform, which I think is great. I think it's benefited everyone.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's, in some senses, done wonders for trust and the way that companies have to and had to trust their workforce. I'm not sure that's entirely reciprocated by the workforce to the management through this period of returning to work, because I think that there was an expectation maybe a year ago that this is forever, this is for absolutely ever. And then, as you know, companies quite understandably had very large venues that needed filling, and actually there was a previous reason to have people at work, so there was probably an ongoing reason to have people at work, started to really push things towards, well, you know, 2-3 days a week. But often they did it in a way that was not hard and fast. It's got to be, you know, Monday to Wednesday afternoon, and then you can do what you want, work from home Thursday, Friday. And I think this has also been quite difficult for the UK workforce to take, include tech within that, in terms of, it's up to you. What do you mean it's up to me? This is a bit weird. I've got, so I can decide, so long as it's kind of 2 or 3 days, I can decide. So I think it's a learning curve that everybody is going through. You know, when I have team members like have maybe childcare issues, and they're asking if instead of the absolute minimum of 3 days, they can maybe do 2. And when you kind of turn around to them and say, absolutely. Oh, but I've already been to HR to see that, and they told me to come back to you because it's not a contractual thing. So there's that give and take, which I think we're all learning as managers and as employees, looking up the line to work out. But I think it can only be positive, and hopefully it settles in this period, because my one fear is that we turn around in 2 years and go, my God, can you remember that time that we used to work from home, and now it's just switched as quickly as it switched the other way, and now we're working back in the office. I don't think that will happen, but I suppose going right back to the beginning of our conversation, the only way that I see the salaries going down is for there to be an economic impact, and actually for the economy to really grind to a halt, and then we're all in trouble. But because we've overheated and we haven't been able to kind of fuel the demands of business with the correct talent, but and then businesses can start to absolutely stipulate on what they want and what they expect from employees coming back to work. So I think, you know, it goes both ways. Employees should hopefully be compliant to a great degree with the 40 to 60% in the office, and I think so long as businesses see that happening, they're happy to continue with the working from home policies that we've seen evolve very, very quickly in the last 2 years.
It's fun enough. I think you're. So what do you, as as opposed to someone senior in a business, you're looking at potentially office space unused, as you said, which that comes at a cost and an overhead. I think where you're absolutely right is I think as soon as it starts hitting a business's bottom line, like I'd feel like, you know, the fact that people aren't in the office means we're not as efficient, not doing as well. That's when it will change, or if it changes. And I think what you said was very interesting about the trust being both ways. And I think people also need to understand that it's an amazing market, the technology market and recruitment at the moment, and you know, just making sure that people are being realistic and honest about when it gets harder. I'm going to have to work harder at home and in the office, not just like use the office as a hard place to work and I'll take it easy at home. And I think that will be the ultimate defining factor. Do businesses continue a hybrid model? Well, yeah, the cold light of day is, if it works for the business, it will carry on working. If it doesn't, it will stop.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say to anyone who is tuning in on LinkedIn, feel free to ask questions for our panelists. They'll be more than happy to kind of ask anything about the jobs market, any tips on hiring, things that people should be thinking about. I know we are in, you know, it's early 2022, and I think anyone in the last 2 years would tell you that making predictions is a bit of a mug's game, particularly with the way that the economy is shaking out, and certainly other socio-economical factors as well. And certainly if we consider things like what potentially could happen in somewhere like the Ukraine, for example, like who knows exactly how the markets are going to react to that. But what do you two think is going to be the most likely outcome this time, you know, next year? Will there be, I wouldn't say like a bottoming out, but a slow descent in terms of salaries, in terms of hiring? And, you know, could it be that the mid-level developer who was initially on something like 50,000, 60,000 pounds and now ended up getting a role for 80, 90,000 is going to be kind of caught out in that, and that their skills and their expertise maybe have been, you know, underinflated or perhaps even like overcompensated? What's this kind of sense of what the next year is going to look like from that front?
I think that the other thing that we haven't mentioned or thrown into the mix is the Internet of Things, and the fact that that's adding even greater demand. And I don't think we've really even scratched the surface of that as far as innovation and truly getting it sorted out is concerned. So I think that's going to fuel continual demand for developers. But I actually think the critical area for all of us, no matter if we're involved in tech or otherwise, is going to be the whole cybersecurity piece for the businesses we deal with, the businesses we work with. And I think that some consultancies are really getting that message is really dropping. You mentioned Ukraine. There are other external threats happening all the time, as we know, plenty of which we don't ever get to hear about, I'm sure. But I think that the cybersecurity piece is going to be the absolutely critical area for businesses, management consultancies be able to supply. Hence, I know a lot of work going into training up from scratch an entire core within management consultancies on the cybersecurity side, and I'm pleased to see it, because it means that we're all a little bit more safer than we would be if we really fall behind the curve on this.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think the predictions tend to make you look like a bit of a tool in 12 months' time. So I suppose what I would see, I think if you're a technologist thinking, do I take advantage of the market now? Do I, you know, get what I'm worth? Yeah, absolutely. I think the ones that potentially will suffer a adverse effect to that 12 months on will be the ones that don't then use that opportunity to upskill themselves, learn new tech. As you mentioned, cybersecurity has become, well, it has been massive, is becoming massive. It's still, everything's getting automated. I think, you know, technologists also have responsibility that they tend to, because it's their passion, but to learn new tech, learn new skills. I mean, like, there's always new stuff coming out. And I think that making sure that they don't get caught out by just comfort zone. I don't foresee, yes, salaries might stop going up at the rate they go, but I don't foresee, you know, you've left a job at 50, join someone else at 90. A year's time, you're not going to have to necessarily take a pay cut. If you have, I would say that's well, unless there's something, as you said, a massive economic crisis. But I only see that happening if you haven't moved forward with the time and stayed with the latest tech. And a short, I can't imagine that the appetite of businesses is going to slow up in terms of aspirationally how they're trying to grow technology projects, their reach to the general public. Everything needs a technological platform, really. So I'm not. Some of the craziness might disperse a bit, but it's normal, isn't it? Like we've been through four recessions, pandemic. You kind of have that mad exit of it where everyone hires, markets go crazy, recruiters sort of pile in, and then you have that lull period, which just normalizes, I suppose. And I think probably it's just harder to predict what does that normalization look like going forwards. Like, how's that going to affect everyone? But I don't see the tech market diminishing or the hunger for tech people diminishing.
Yeah, I mean, we going back, obviously really showing my age now, but the dot-com bubble burst in 2003 and that did hit the tech community for a bit.
Yes, yeah.
But 2008, when the banking crisis, in some senses it accelerated it because everybody wanted to cut costs and they knew that digitalization would be able to make them more efficient. So in fact, it didn't slow anything down, even though there was a big financial crisis. And tech was one of the few markets that really, I won't say flourished, but managed to drive ahead rather than kind of sitting in the doldrums for a few years. Big data almost came to the rescue. Where are we losing our money? Just get something with big data on it and it will sort everything out. And I think that trend will continue, but that almost sounds like the kind of quote that could come back to haunt you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just reminding anyone, if you have any questions for our panelists before we wrap up, feel free to ask them on LinkedIn chat. We're ready whenever you are. But just as we're getting those questions coming through, kind of in terms of just if you could, Nick, if you could just kind of almost just give us a very like a snapshot of what the volume has been like. It's certainly, you can see from the amount of web traffic we've been getting on client server website, number of applications coming through. This is well and above what we saw even 12 months ago, much less further afield. Is there a sense that even the business client server as a business right now has never been just busier, just with the sheer number of applications and candidates making a shift? What does the volume actually look like?
Yeah, I mean, you said it absolutely right. We've never ever in 21 years of business been as busy, and I suppose the combination of live vacancies clients are trying to hire for, we're probably 30 to 40% more than we've ever been at any point in our history, and you could do that as a percentage of it, even if you took the size we were versus the size we are now. Like, it's exponentially huge. The candidate application process or volume is just enormous, and I think without blowing your trumpet, Mike, as a head of marketing who's made our brand now one of the biggest ones in terms of technology recruitment in the UK, and people understand what we do. We get so much inbound traffic, and I think we were talking about visas and remote working, and I think people who now also can see opportunities in London with fully remote requirements, we're now suddenly getting a lot more applications from people outside of the UK that might not have done it previously. So there's always going to be a quality issue. I mean, that's in theory what we're here to vet and provide our clients. But there's certainly not a shortage of applicants. There's an education process of making sure they have the right people for the right clients. But the volume is incredible, and I think the main piece at the moment is making sure we do our jobs as we're meant to do, which is, pick the best candidates to fit the best clients, so that we streamline that process, because it is, it does seem like a crazy time in recruitment and opportunity, but ultimately that's our job. Ultimately, that's what will make us successful going forward, and ultimately that's what will make us the best in our market. Is in good, bad, or in different times, we still provide the same level of service, which actually means consultants having to work a lot harder at the moment to go through all those applications. But it's exciting. It's also exciting to see the potential we've still got to go as a business over the next 12 to 18 months.
Nick, are you finding that clients are a little bit faster and looser with who they're recruiting because they just need a backside on the seat, or are they being just as rigorous, or is it?
They definitely are. I need to be careful what I say, but yeah, I sort of described it as chatting to. We had a fairly recent intake of more junior consultants, and my description always to them is like, we deal with the 9 and 10 out of 10 candidates. That's what our clients pay us for, and candidates that I would have said were 6, 7 out of 10 candidates a year ago are all getting jobs today. So they are being a bit faster and looser. I think I don't think they're making those decisions uneducated. I think they know that. I think a lot of it is they're probably backing themselves to be able to upskill some of those people, get them up to speed. They're being far more open to, they might have had 4 or 5 very senior hires. They'll take a couple more juniors and they'll use their time to upskill them, make sure they're right for the job. But I suppose the bar to entry has definitely lowered a little.
That's actually really a real positive in some sense, isn't it? Because they're being realistic on what's in the market, and the fact that actually, so long as intellectual curiosity, give me someone with that, give me someone with decent skills and intellectual curiosity, and I'm sure we can build in what our company does and the extra.
Absolutely, literally, that is for me. I'm put far more weighting on emotional intelligence, inquisitive mind, how someone is, general, how they engage with you. Because you're right. I think that there will be how a business retains more staff. Give someone an opportunity, invest in them, that they're going to remain more loyal. And I think that you're right. It's an exciting change because a few more people are getting opportunities to grow and empower themselves in a business versus just the top 1%. But they're having to adapt like that, which I think is a good thing. It's a positive thing. You're absolutely right.
I think you're right.
Well, guys, we are coming up to the end of our time on this episode of Talking Tech. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I suppose the final part for me, just to talk, is I think that whether it's you're looking for a job or whether you're happy in your job, my bit of advice, which I think we've spoken about, Mike, is just making sure don't sit in this market and only take advantage of what the good opportunities provide. Like, just make sure that you're using any opportunity to upskill yourself, get yourself better, and especially if it's not your business or the company you work for is predominantly remote. I think they need to make sure they're being super proactive about learning from people in the business, getting time with them, whether it's over Zoom or over Team, whatever it might be, is making sure that they're doing that so that come the next cycle of when they're looking, they are more valuable, they're better skilled, they're more experienced. And if people are doing that, I think they'll be getting value to all the businesses they work for.
Yeah, my advice would be twofold. If you're a CIO or a CFO, keep your seatbelt on because it's gonna keep accelerating. And if you're an applicant, I would, particularly if you're a female applicant, now is the time not to be shy about asking your true worth and being bold and making sure, because the disparity in pay is still there, male to female, and it's not correct. It's not fair. And in these times of the importance of diversity and inclusion, you have extra value to come into an IT team and maybe balance their numbers to a certain extent, whilst bringing great skills to it. So be bold, don't be shy, and take this time to really get your true worth.
Absolutely. I think that's a really strong note to end on. And before we wrap up, I'd just like to say that if you are looking for a role within the tech industry, we have more than 600 jobs now advertised on our website at client-server.com. And if you want to follow Talking Tech, we are here every either Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, every 2 weeks around about this time, not only talking about jobs and everything else that's going on in our world here, but everything that is happening in the wider tech space as well. So find Client Server on LinkedIn, connect with us, follow us, and you'll get the latest updates for when we are going live. And you can watch this episode and other episodes that we've done again on demand. They are saved on the right-hand side of our LinkedIn page under events. You can go back and you can watch that anytime you want. But from me here in the client service studio, thank you very much for your time, gents. And again, if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to make them in the chat and we will pass them along. But from me, good afternoon and thank you for joining.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Mike.